She sang to soothe his daughter, until the muscular millionaire tycoon everyone feared stepped in. 3 days of peace ended with the sound of helicopter blades cutting through Malibu's morning silence. Harper dropped her cereal spoon, milk splashing across the kitchen table. Her entire body went rigid, like prey sensing a predator's approach. Why would a father forbid music in a house where his daughter desperately needed healing? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. She arrived at the mansion gates, expecting to care for a child. She never expected the child to save her life. Naomi Washington pressed her face against the cold Uber window, watching Malibu's golden coastline blur past. 26 years old, broke, and desperate. Her last $50 went to this ride from LAX. The jazz clubs in Baton Rouge had dried up. Her grandmother's medical bills crushed her savings, and now she was betting everything on a mysterious nanny job posted at 2 a.m. with no interview required. Have you ever taken a job that felt too good to be true? That gut feeling that whispered run, while your bank account screamed stay? The Bennett mansion rose from the cliffs like a fortress. Security cameras tracked her every step. Armed guards nodded silently as she approached the front door. What kind of 4-year-old needed this level of protection? The butler, stone-faced and efficient, led her through marble hallways lined with portraits of stern-looking ancestors. Not a single photograph showed warmth. No family pictures. No children's drawings taped to refrigerators. Just cold perfection. "Harper's in the music room," he said, his voice flat. "She doesn't speak." "Since when?" Naomi asked. 8 months. Since her mother died." He opened double doors, revealing a little girl sitting perfectly still at a grand piano. Harper Bennett had her father's piercing green eyes and her mother's delicate features, but something had died behind those eyes. She wore a pristine white dress, her dark hair in perfect ringlets, but she looked like a porcelain doll left on a shelf. Naomi's heart cracked. She recognized that look. She'd worn it herself at 7 years old, standing at her mother's funeral. "Hey, beautiful," Naomi whispered, kneeling beside the piano bench. "I'm Naomi. I hear you love music." Harper's eyes flickered, the first sign of life, but she remained silent. The house felt heavy with secrets. Expensive artwork covered every wall, but the frames couldn't hide the pain seeping through the walls. Where was Harper's father? Why had no one mentioned him during the hiring process? As afternoon melted into evening, Naomi tried everything. Coloring books sat untouched. Toys remained in their boxes. Even ice cream couldn't coax a smile from those hollow green eyes. Then Naomi remembered her grandmother's words. "When words fail, baby girl, let your soul sing." She sat at the piano, fingers finding familiar keys. The melody her grandmother used to hum while braiding her hair, soft and healing like honey over wounds. Naomi's voice, rich and smooth, filled the empty spaces. "Close your eyes, little one. Let the music take you home." Harper's head turned. For the first time all day, she looked directly at Naomi. The song continued, weaving through childhood memories and promises of safety. Harper's tiny hand crept across the piano bench, closer to Naomi's thigh. By the final verse, the little girl was leaning against her arm, eyes closed, breathing steady for the first time since morning. A shadow moved in the doorway. Naomi's voice caught, but she didn't stop singing. Someone was watching them. The air shifted, grew heavier. Harper sensed it too, pressing closer to Naomi's side. When the song ended, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Whoever had been listening was gone. "Who was that, Harper?" Naomi whispered. The little girl's eyes went wide with fear. She grabbed Naomi's hand and shook her head frantically, pointing toward the door. "Don't ask. Don't tell. Don't sing too loud." But as Naomi tucked Harper into bed that night, the child whispered her first words in 8 months. "Daddy doesn't like singing anymore." Why would a father forbid music in a house where his daughter desperately needed healing? What happened to Harper's mother? And who was watching them from the shadows? If you had to choose between a job that could save your life and a secret that could end it, what would you do? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for the next chapter of Harper's story. 3 days of peace ended with the sound of helicopter blades cutting through Malibu's morning silence. Harper dropped her cereal spoon, milk splashing across the kitchen table. Her entire body went rigid, like prey sensing a predator's approach. The housekeeper, Maria, crossed herself and muttered something in Spanish that sounded like a prayer. "Is that Daddy?" Naomi asked gently. Harper nodded, sliding off her chair to hide behind Naomi's legs. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Naomi watched a black helicopter descend onto the mansion's private landing pad. Even from a distance, she could see him, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with military precision. Colt Bennett had returned from wherever billionaires disappear to when their daughters need them most. Have you ever felt someone's presence before they enter the room? That electric charge that makes your skin tingle and your heart race? Naomi had heard whispers about Colt Bennett from the staff. Former Navy SEAL turned tech genius. Built 3 security companies from nothing, sold them for billions, then vanished from public life after his wife Elena's death. The man who could hack Pentagon systems but couldn't figure out how to heal his own daughter. Heavy footsteps echoed through the marble foyer. Harper's grip tightened on Naomi's sundress. The kitchen doors swung open. Colt Bennett filled the doorway like a storm cloud. 6'4", broad chest straining against a black t-shirt, arms covered in military tattoos that spoke of battles fought in foreign lands. His green eyes, identical to Harper's, swept the room with tactical assessment before landing on Naomi. She felt stripped bare under that gaze. Exposed, like he could see through her amateur acting and discover she was just a broke jazz singer pretending to be qualified for this job. "You must be the new nanny," he said. His voice carried the rough edge of a man who'd given orders in war zones. "Naomi Washington," she replied, standing straighter. "And you must be Harper's father." Something flickered across his face. Surprise? Most people probably cowered when meeting Colt Bennett. Naomi had learned early that showing fear only invited more pain. "How is she?" he asked, his eyes finding Harper, who was still pressed against Naomi's legs. "She's making progress." Define progress. The challenge in his voice made Naomi's temper flare. This man had been gone for 3 days while his traumatized daughter barely ate, barely slept, barely existed. "She spoke yesterday," Naomi said. First words in 8 months. Colt's entire body went still. What did she say? Naomi hesitated. Should she repeat Harper's words about Daddy not liking singing? Would that get her fired before she could help this broken little family? She said she missed you. The lie rolled off her tongue smoothly. Harper squeezed her leg, understanding they were keeping their secret. Colt's jaw tightened. He knelt down, arms outstretched. "Hey, princess." "Daddy's home." Harper looked up at Naomi, then slowly walked toward her father. His face transformed when she fell into his arms, all that hardness melting into desperate love. He held her like she might disappear, his eyes closing as he buried his face in her dark curls. "I missed you too, baby girl," he whispered. But when Harper pulled back, she remained silent. The moment of connection shattered against the wall of her trauma. Colt's eyes found Naomi over Harper's head. There was something raw there, vulnerable. A crack in his armor that revealed the desperate father beneath the billionaire facade. "I need to speak with you," he said quietly. "Tonight, after Harper's asleep." The way he said it sent heat racing down Naomi's spine. Not just professional discussion, something more personal, more dangerous. Maria cleared her throat. "Breakfast is getting cold, Senor Bennett." But Colt didn't move. He was still looking at Naomi like she held the key to a lock he'd been trying to break for months. 8 o'clock, he said. "My office." As he carried Harper toward the dining room, Naomi caught her reflection in the kitchen window. Her cheeks were flushed, her pulse racing. What kind of conversation required that much intensity? And why did the thought of being alone with Colt Bennett at night make her feel like she was walking toward a cliff? Would you trust a man whose own daughter was afraid to sing in his house? Share your thoughts below and hit that like button if you're ready to discover what Colt Bennett is really hiding. That night, Naomi stood outside Colt's office door, her hand frozen inches from the wood. 8 o'clock had come and gone. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. Through the heavy door, She could hear him moving around, footsteps pacing, a glass clinking against a surface, papers rustling with frustrated energy. Have you ever stood at a door knowing that opening it would change everything? That moment when you realize there's no going back? She knocked twice, soft but firm. Come in. Colt's office looked like a war room. Wall-mounted monitors displayed security feeds from every angle of the property. Military medals sat in shadow boxes beside photographs of him with politicians and tech moguls. But on his desk, among the contracts and classified documents, sat a single-frame picture of Elena holding baby Harper. Colt stood with his back to her, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the moonlit Pacific. He'd changed from his casual clothes into dark jeans and a white button-down shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing those intricate tattoos that mapped his dangerous past. "Close the door," he said without turning around. The lock clicked with finality. They were alone. "Seat." Shh. Naomi chose the leather chair farthest from his desk, but when Colt finally faced her, the distance felt meaningless. His green eyes held the intensity of a man accustomed to life-or-death decisions. "Tell me the truth," he said, moving closer. "What did Harper really say yesterday?" Naomi's mouth went dry. "I told you. You lied." He stopped directly in front of her chair, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and danger. "My daughter doesn't miss me. She's terrified of me." The pain in his voice cracked something open in Naomi's chest. This wasn't the cold billionaire from the morning. This was a father destroying himself with guilt. "She said you don't like singing anymore," Naomi whispered. Colt's face went white. He turned away, running both hands through his dark hair. "Jesus." The word came out broken. "She remembers." Remembers what? Silence stretched between them like a taut wire. When Colt spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "The night Elena died, she was singing to Harper. A lullaby." His shoulders shook. "I came home early from a business trip. Found them in the music room. She was so beautiful when she sang. Happy. Alive." He moved to the window, pressing his palm against the glass. "We had a fight. About money, about my work, about moving somewhere safer. I said terrible things. Told her the singing was pointless, that she was filling Harper's head with fantasies instead of preparing her for the real world." Naomi's heart clenched. What happened next? Elena ran upstairs. I heard her crying, heard her slam the bedroom door. I was too proud to follow. His voice turned razor-sharp with self-hatred. 2 hours later, she was dead. Car accident on Pacific Coast Highway. The last words I ever said to her were about how much I hated her singing. The confession hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Harper heard everything. The fight, Elena leaving, the police coming to tell us. Colt's reflection in the window looked like a ghost. "My daughter hasn't sung since because she thinks music killed her mother." Naomi stood, moving toward him before she could stop herself. "Colt, don't." He spun around, and suddenly they were inches apart. His eyes blazed with grief and something deeper, more dangerous. "Don't make excuses for me. I destroyed everything good in that house." But Naomi didn't step back. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the pulse jumping in his throat. This close, Colt Bennett wasn't a billionaire or a former soldier. He was just a man drowning in regret. "Harper spoke because of music," she said softly. "Your daughter is healing because someone finally gave her permission to feel again. And what about me?" The question escaped like a prayer. Am I allowed to feel again? The space between them crackled with electricity. Colt's eyes dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. His hand rose slowly, fingertips barely brushing her cheek. "I should fire you," he whispered. "Why?" "Because you make me want things I don't deserve." But instead of stepping away, his thumb traced her jawline with devastating gentleness. What happens when a man who's built walls around his heart meets a woman who can bring them crashing down? Comment below and smash that subscribe button, because tomorrow, everything changes. The next morning, Naomi woke up with Colt's touch still burning on her skin. She'd left his office after that almost kiss, but sleep had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face in the moonlight. Vulnerable, hungry, dangerous. The way he'd looked at her, like she was both salvation and destruction. Now, watching Harper eat breakfast, Naomi tried to focus on the little girl instead of the father who'd made her pulse race with just a whisper of his fingers. "Good morning, ladies." Colt's voice made her jump. He entered the kitchen looking every inch the controlled billionaire again. Expensive suit, perfectly styled hair, that mask of indifference locked firmly in place. But when his eyes met hers, heat flashed between them like lightning. Have you ever tried to pretend you don't want someone while they're standing right in front of you? That impossible game where every look feels like a secret? "Daddy," Harper actually smiled, sliding off her chair to hug his legs. "Morning, princess." Colt lifted her easily, but his gaze stayed on Naomi. "Sleep well." The question was innocent enough, but the way he said it, low and intimate, made her cheeks burn. He knew exactly what he was doing. Like a baby, Naomi lied smoothly, his mouth curved in the ghost of a smile. "Good. I have a business dinner tonight. Important client." He set Harper down, straightening his tie. "I'll need you to stay late." "Of course. The dinner's here, at the house." His eyes locked with hers. "We're something appropriate." Before Naomi could ask what that meant, he was gone, leaving behind the scent of his cologne and a room that suddenly felt too small. Maria, who'd been pretending not to listen, shook her head. "Ay, Dios mío, that man is trouble." "What do you mean?" "I've worked for this family for 15 years. I know that look." Maria's dark eyes were knowing. "Senor Bennett, he's never brought a woman to the house since Elena died. But you? He watches like a hawk watches a mouse." He crept up Naomi's neck. "It's not like that. I'm just a nanny. See, and I'm just a housekeeper." Maria laughed. "But we both know there's nothing just about anything in this house." That evening, Naomi stood in her small bedroom, staring at her pathetic wardrobe. What did appropriate mean to a billionaire? She had exactly 3 dresses: a sundress, a black cocktail dress from her singing days, and a formal gown she'd bought for her cousin's wedding. The cocktail dress it was. The black fabric hugged her curves like a second skin, the neckline dipping just low enough to be interesting without being inappropriate. She left her hair down in soft waves and applied just enough makeup to highlight her dark eyes and full lips. When she walked downstairs to check on Harper before the guests arrived, she found Colt waiting in the foyer. He looked devastating in a midnight blue suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean waist. But when he saw her, his professional composure cracked completely. "Jesus, Naomi." His voice was rough, hungry. "You're trying to kill me." The words hit her like a physical touch. She felt powerful, feminine, desired in a way that made her blood sing. "Is this appropriate enough?" she asked, doing a slow turn that made the dress flare around her thighs. Colt's eyes followed every movement, lingering on the curve of her hips, the smooth line of her legs. When she faced him again, his control was hanging by a thread. "Perfect," he said. "Too perfect." Before either of them could say anything else, the doorbell rang. Colt's business mask slammed back into place as Maria rushed to answer the door. "Remember," he said quietly as voices filled the foyer, "you're just a nanny tonight." But the way he looked at her, like he wanted to devour her whole, made that lie impossible to believe. As the first guests entered, Naomi caught a glimpse of the man leading them. Tall, silver-haired, with eyes like winter frost. He looked at her with an expression that made her skin crawl. "Colt," the man said, his voice smooth as silk. "You didn't mention you had such lovely help." Something in Colt's jaw tightened. "Victoria Ashford's father, Richard." "Naomi, this is Richard Ashford, Elena's business partner." The name hit Naomi like a punch. Elena's business partner? The man who'd been working with Colt's dead wife was now staring at her like she was prey. What was Richard Ashford really doing here? And why did Naomi suddenly feel like she'd walked into a trap? Drop a red heart if you can feel the tension building, and don't forget to subscribe, because the danger is just getting started. The dinner party felt like walking through a minefield in heels. Naomi moved through Colt's dining room, serving drinks and trying to blend into the background while every instinct screamed that she was being hunted. Richard Ashford's eyes followed her every move, cold and calculating. The other guests, wealthy tech executives and their wives, barely acknowledged her existence, but Richard watched like she was the most fascinating thing in the room. Have you ever felt like everyone around you was speaking in code? Like there was a conversation happening beneath the polite words that you weren't meant to understand? The Bennett estate has certainly evolved since Elena's passing, Richard said, accepting a glass of wine from Naomi's tray. His fingers brushed hers deliberately, lingering longer than necessary. New staff, new energy, very different from the grieving widower we all knew. Colt's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Change is inevitable, Richard. Some of us choose to move forward. Of course, though I'm sure Elena would be surprised to see how quickly you've moved on. The words hung in the air like poison. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. But Richard's attention never left Naomi, even as she backed toward the kitchen. In the hallway, she pressed against the wall, heart pounding. That man wasn't just Elena's business partner. He was dangerous. The way he'd spoken Elena's name like a weapon. The way he'd touched her hand like he was marking territory. Struggling with the service? Naomi spun around. A woman stood in the shadows, tall, elegant, with platinum blonde hair and cruel blue eyes. She looked like she'd stepped off the cover of Fashion magazine, if fashion magazines featured predators. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met," Naomi said. "Victories Fourth, Richard's daughter." The woman's smile was sharp as a blade. "And you're the nanny who's been caring for poor little Harper." The way she said caring made it sound dirty. "That's right." Victoria moved closer, designer heels clicking on marble. "You know, it's funny. Elena used to talk about getting Harper a nanny. Someone young, pretty, musically inclined. Her laugh was like breaking glass. Almost like she knew exactly what Colt would need after she was gone. I don't understand. Don't you?" Victoria's eyes glittered with malice. A beautiful black woman with a voice like honey, showing up just when Colt's at his most vulnerable, seems awfully convenient. The racist undertone hit Naomi like a slap. But before she could respond, Victoria continued. "Elena was my best friend. Did you know that? We built a business together, shared secrets, planned our futures. She used to worry that Colt was too intense, too controlling. Sometimes she wondered if he'd ever let her go." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Elena's death was very convenient for someone who wanted a fresh start." Victoria stepped closer, close enough that Naomi could smell her expensive perfume. "And now here you are, playing the same role Elena did. Singing to his daughter, warming his bed. I'm not sleeping with him yet." Victoria's smile was vicious. "Give it time. Colt has a type. Beautiful, talented, vulnerable. Elena fit that description perfectly, right up until she became inconvenient." The implication hit Naomi like ice water. Was Victoria suggesting that Colt had killed his wife? "You're crazy." "Am I?" "Elena called me the night she died. She was scared, Naomi. Said she found something in Colt's files, something that changed everything. She was planning to leave him, take Harper somewhere safe." Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. 3 hours later, she was dead in a car accident on a road she'd driven 1,000 times. Naomi's hands started shaking. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you remind me of her. Young, naive, thinking you can save him." Victoria's eyes were cold as winter. But men like Colt Bennett don't get saved. They just find new victims. Footsteps echoed from the dining room. Someone was coming. "Think about it," Victoria hissed. "A mysterious job posting. No background check. No references required. Almost like someone wanted you here, isolated and dependent. Just like Elena was." She glided away just as Colt appeared in the hallway. "There you are." His voice was warm, concerned. "Everything all right?" Looking at him now, handsome, powerful, seemingly worried about her, Naomi felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Was this the face of a man who'd killed his wife? Or was Victoria Ashford planting poison seeds to destroy something beautiful before it could bloom? Fine, Naomi managed. Just needed some air. But as Colt's hand touched her back, guiding her toward the kitchen, she couldn't shake Victoria's words. Elena had been scared. Elena had found something. Elena had wanted to leave. And now Elena was dead. What would you do if you discovered the man you're falling for might have killed his wife? Tell us in the comments and hit subscribe, because the truth about Elena's death is darker than anyone imagined. The kiss that would destroy everything started with a child's nightmare. At 2 a.m., Harper's screams pierced through the mansion's silence like broken glass. Naomi bolted upright in her bed, bare feet hitting cold marble as she raced down the hallway. Behind Harper's door, she could hear the little girl sobbing, raw, desperate sounds that tore at her heart. "Baby, it's okay," Naomi whispered, pushing into the room. "I'm here." Harper was sitting up in her princess bed, tears streaming down her face, reaching for someone who wasn't there. Mommy, don't go." Have you ever watched someone relive their worst moment? That helpless feeling when all you can do is hold them while they break apart? Naomi gathered Harper into her arms, rocking her gently. She was a sweet girl. It was just a dream. She was driving away again. Harper sobbed against her shoulder, and Daddy was yelling, and the car was going too fast. Naomi's blood went cold. Harper remembered the night Elena died. Not just the fight. She remembered watching her mother leave angry, watching her drive away into the darkness. "Harper, baby, what else do you remember?" But before the little girl could answer, heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Colt burst through the door, hair wild, wearing only dark pajama pants that hung low on his hips. His chest was bare, revealing more of those military tattoos that mapped his dangerous past. "What happened?" "I heard screaming." "Nightmare," Naomi said softly, still holding Harper. About the night Elena left. Colt's face went white. He moved toward them, and Naomi caught the scent of his skin, warm, masculine, intoxicating even in the middle of this tragedy. "Princess, come to Daddy." Harper shook her head, clinging tighter to Naomi. "She sings the scared away." The words hit Colt like a physical blow. His own daughter preferred the comfort of a woman she'd known for weeks over the father who'd raised her. "Please," he whispered, and the brokenness in his voice made Naomi's chest ache. "Let me try." Slowly, carefully, Naomi transferred Harper to Colt's arms. The little girl was tiny against his broad chest, but she remained tense, ready to bolt. "Tell me about the dream, Princess." Mommy was crying. "You were mad." She got in the car and drove fast. Harper's voice was small, haunted. Then the lights came, red and blue lights. "And you cried too." Colt's arms tightened around his daughter. "I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry I made Mommy sad that night. Was it my fault?" Harper whispered. "Did Mommy leave because I was bad?" "No." Colt's voice was fierce, absolute. "Nothing that happened was your fault. Mommy loved you more than anything in the world." As Colt comforted Harper, Naomi found herself studying his face in the moonlight. This was the real Colt Bennett. Not the cold billionaire or the dangerous soldier, but a father destroyed by guilt, desperate to heal his daughter's wounds. When Harper finally fell back asleep, Colt carried her to her bed, tucking her in with infinite gentleness. But as they tiptoed toward the door, Harper's sleepy voice stopped them. "Daddy, can Naomi sleep here tonight? So the bad dreams don't come back." Colt's eyes met Naomi's across the darkened room. The request was innocent, but the tension between them was anything but. Being alone together in the dark, with Harper sleeping between them, felt dangerous in ways Naomi couldn't name. "Please," Harper added, already drifting off. "Of course, baby," Naomi said before Colt could object. They settled on opposite sides of Harper's bed. The little girl curled between them like a bridge. In the darkness, Naomi could hear Colt's breathing, feel the heat radiating from his body just feet away. "She remembers everything," he whispered after long minutes of silence. "Children always do." The security footage from that night. His voice was barely audible. I watched it 1,000 times. Elena was driving erratically, too fast for the curves, like she was running from something. Or someone. Naomi's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" There was another car behind her, following too close, lights too bright. When she crashed, it disappeared. The implication hung between them like smoke. Elena's death might not have been an accident. Why haven't you told the police? Because I have no proof. And because his voice broke. Because part of me wonders if I'm just trying to blame someone else for what I did. For driving her away that night. Without thinking, Naomi reached across the sleeping child between them. Her fingers found Colt's hand in the darkness, squeezing gently. You didn't kill her, she whispered. How can you be so sure? Because killers don't cry when their daughters have nightmares. They don't spend months watching security footage looking for answers. They don't hire broken jazz singers to heal their children with lullabies. Colt's thumb traced across her knuckles, the touch electric even in the darkness. What if I can't protect you? He whispered. What if whoever killed Elena comes for you next? The words should have terrified her. Instead, they made her heart race with something deeper than fear. Then we find them first. But as Naomi drifted towards sleep, Harper safe between them and Colt's hand warm in hers, she didn't notice the red light blinking in the corner of the room. Someone was watching. Someone was recording. And by morning, their enemies would have everything they needed to destroy them both. Who do you think is watching them? Drop your theories in the comments and smash that like button if you're ready for the truth about Elena's death. The envelope arrived with Naomi's morning coffee, delivered by a courier who disappeared before Maria could ask questions. Inside, photographs, dozens of them. Naomi and Colt in his office, faces inches apart. Naomi in her black dress at the dinner party, Colt's eyes devouring her. The three of them in Harper's bed, hands touching across the sleeping child. The images looked intimate, inappropriate, scandalous. A single note was paper-clipped to the top photo. Child Services will be very interested in the nanny who shares beds with her employer. You have 48 hours to resign and disappear, or Harper pays the price. Have you ever held evidence of your own destruction in your hands? That moment when you realize someone has been watching, planning, waiting for you to make a mistake? Naomi's hand shook as she flipped through the photos. Someone had been inside the house, in Harper's room, capturing private moments and twisting them into something ugly. Morning beautiful. Colt's voice made her jump. She spun around, shoving the photos behind her back as he entered the kitchen. He looked devastating in a charcoal suit, but his smile faded when he saw her face. What's wrong? Nothing. Just tired. But Colt had survived combat zones by reading people's tells. He moved closer, his green eyes sharp with concern. Naomi, what happened? Before she could answer, Harper skipped into the kitchen, humming softly. The first time she'd made music since her mother's death. The sound should have been beautiful, but all Naomi could think about was losing this little girl forever. I have to go, Naomi said suddenly. Go where? Away. From here. From you. The words came out broken, desperate. I'm sorry. Harper! I have to leave. Harper's humming stopped. Her face crumpled like Naomi had slapped her. But you just got here, the little girl whispered. You said you'd teach me the song about flying. Colt stepped between them, his body radiating dangerous energy. Nobody's going anywhere until I understand what's happening. Colt, please. Show me. His voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Against her better judgment, Naomi pulled out the photos. Colt's face went lethal as he flipped through the images. By the time he reached the note, his jaw was carved from stone. Victoria, he said quietly. How do you know? Because she's been trying to destroy my family since Elena died. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying over the screen. Richard Ashford and his daughter have been circling like vultures, waiting for their chance. Their chance for what? Colt's eyes met hers, and she saw a fury there that could level mountains. Harper's inheritance. Elena left everything to her daughter, the business, the patents, the trust fund. But if I'm deemed an unfit father, they get control. Exactly. He moved to the window, his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. They've been playing a long game. First, they tried to prove I killed Elena. When that didn't work, they decided to destroy my reputation as a father. Naomi sank into a chair, the weight of the situation crushing her. So I walk away. I disappear. Harper keeps her family, her inheritance, her father. Like hell. The violence in Colt's voice made her look up. He was staring at her like she'd suggested cutting off his arm. You think I'm going to let them terrorize you into running? Let them win by taking away the one person who's brought light back into my daughter's life. Colt, be realistic. These photos are lies. Manipulated truth designed to destroy something beautiful. He crossed her, kneeling in front of her chair so they were eye to eye. I won't let them take you from us. The possessiveness in his voice sent heat racing through her veins. What are you saying? I'm saying we fight. Together. His hands framed her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. I'm saying I'd rather burn down everything I've built than watch you walk away. And Harper needs you. I need you. His voice dropped to a whisper. I'm falling in love with you, Naomi. I've been since the first night I heard you sing. The confession hit her like lightning. Before she could respond, his mouth was on hers, desperate, hungry, claiming. She melted into him, hands fisting in his suit jacket as he kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Harper was standing in the doorway with wide eyes. Are you my new mommy now? She asked innocently. The question hung in the air like a promise and a threat. Because somewhere in Malibu, Victoria Ashford was probably watching, waiting, ready to use even this innocent moment as another weapon. We're family, Colt said finally, pulling both Naomi and Harper in his arms. And families protect each other. But as they stood there, holding each other against the storm, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria's next move would be their last. What would you do if someone threatened to take away your family to get what they wanted? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe, because the battle for Harper's future is just beginning. 3 hours later, Colt's war room looked like an FBI field office. Maps covered every surface. Computer screens displayed financial records, phone logs, and security footage. Colt sat at the center of it all, his shirt sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. He looked like a man preparing for battle. Found something. Marcus Chun, Colt's head of security, burst through the door carrying a tablet. Former CIA, built like a tank with eyes that missed nothing. If Colt trusted anyone with his family's lives, it was Marcus. Richard Ashford's been busy, Marcus said, setting the tablet on the desk. Shell companies, offshore accounts, payments to private investigators. Someone's been funding a very expensive surveillance operation. Have you ever discovered that your life has been dissected by strangers? That every private moment has been cataloged, analyzed, weaponized against you? Naomi studied the financial records over Colt's shoulder, her hand resting on his back for support. The heat of his body through the thin shirt made it hard to concentrate, but she forced herself to focus. This payment here, she said, pointing to a line item. 2 days before I was hired. What's recruitment services? Marcus and Colt exchanged looks. They didn't just wait for you to show up, Colt said quietly. They made sure you would. The implication hit her like ice water. The job posting, the mysterious employer who didn't want references, was probably Victoria or her father, setting you up to be the perfect weapon against me. Colt's voice was deadly calm. They researched you, knew your financial situation, your background. They dangled exactly what you needed in front of you. Naomi sank into a chair, her world tilting sideways. So everything, meeting Harper, helping her speak, falling for you, was part of their plan? No. Colt spun his chair around, grabbing her hands. What happened between us, what you did for Harper, that was real. They might have brought you here, but they couldn't control what happened after. Are you sure? Because right now, I feel like a puppet dancing on strings I can't see. Marcus cleared his throat. There's more. Elena's business records show some interesting patterns in the months before her death. He pulled up another screen showing financial transactions. Elena was moving money, large amounts quietly, to accounts Richard didn't have access to. Like she was preparing for something. Or someone, Colt added grimly. Marcus, can you trace where the money went? Already did. Private security firm in San Diego. The kind that specializes in protection for women fleeing dangerous situations. The room went silent. Elena had been planning to leave, just like Victoria had claimed. But she'd been scared enough to hire professional protection. There's something else, Marcus continued. The night Elena died, There were 3 cars on Pacific Coast Highway. Elena's Mercedes, the vehicle that was following her, and a 3rd car that left the scene before police arrived. Colt leaned forward. "Can you identify the vehicles?" "Working on it. But here's what's interesting. The 3rd car? It was registered to a shell company owned by Richard Ashford." The pieces were falling into place like a deadly puzzle. Elena hadn't died in a random accident. She'd been murdered, probably by the same people now, trying to destroy Colt and take Harper. "We need more than circumstantial evidence," Colt said. "Something that will hold up in court." "What about Elena's computer?" Naomi suggested. "If she was planning to leave, she might have kept records, evidence. Police returned it after the investigation. It's in my safe upstairs." "You never looked?" Colt's face darkened. "I couldn't. Opening her computer felt like violating her memory. But now," he stood abruptly, purpose radiating from every line of his body. "Marcus, keep digging into those financial records." "Naomi, come with me." They climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, Elena's room, untouched since her death. Naomi had never been inside, and the preserved perfection felt like walking through a shrine. Elena's perfume still lingered in the air. Her jewelry sat on the dresser exactly as she'd left it. Colt moved to a hidden safe behind a painting of the California coastline. His fingers trembled slightly as he entered the combination. "Colt," Naomi said softly, "we don't have to do this now. If it's too difficult." "No." His voice was steel. "Elena deserves justice. Harper deserves the truth." The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, among legal documents and backup drives, sat Elena's laptop. As Colt lifted it out, an envelope fell to the floor. Naomi's name was written across it in elegant handwriting. "That's impossible," Colt breathed. "Elena died months before you arrived." But there it was, in black ink, for Naomi Washington. How could a dead woman write a letter to someone she'd never met? And what secrets had Elena hidden that Victoria Ashford was willing to kill for? Drop a fire if you think Elena knew more than she let on, and hit subscribe because the truth about that night is about to change everything. The letter felt like holding a ghost. Naomi's hand shook as she broke the seal on the envelope. Inside, Elena's elegant handwriting covered 2 pages of cream-colored paper. But it was the date that made her blood run cold. The letter was written the morning of Elena's death. "Read out loud," Colt said quietly. He sat on the edge of the bed, Elena's laptop forgotten in his lap. Naomi cleared her throat and began. "To the woman who will come after me. If you're reading this, then I'm dead, and Richard Ashford has moved to his next phase. I don't know your name yet, but I know you exist. I've seen the psychological profiles he's commissioning, the detailed requirements for the perfect candidate. Young, beautiful, musically gifted, financially desperate. A woman who can heal Harper's trauma and capture Colt's guarded heart. You weren't chosen randomly. You were selected as carefully as a weapon. But here's what Richard doesn't understand. Love can't be manufactured. Whatever you feel for my husband and daughter is real, even if the circumstances that brought you here were false. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Have you ever felt like someone was speaking to you from beyond the grave? Like they'd reached across death to offer you a lifeline in your darkest moment?" Naomi's voice cracked as she continued. "Richard and Victoria have been planning this for over a year. They want Harper's inheritance, but more than that, they want to punish Colt for choosing me over Victoria. Yes, Victoria was obsessed with my husband long before we married. When he rejected her for a nobody like me, she vowed to destroy everything he loved. I've discovered their plan has 3 phases. 1. Make my death look accidental while I'm fleeing an abusive marriage. 2. Discredit Colt as a father using a beautiful nanny as evidence. 3. Gain custody of Harper and control of her trust fund. I'm leaving this letter because I know I won't survive tonight. They've been poisoning me slowly, small doses in my food, my coffee, my vitamins. Making me sick, confused, paranoid. They want Colt to think I'm having a mental breakdown. But I found the medical bills. Victoria's been seeing a toxicologist, learning about untraceable compounds that mimic mental illness. Tonight, when I confront Richard with the evidence, he'll have no choice but to silence me permanently. The car accident will be their cover story. But I've hidden proof, financial records, recorded conversations, medical evidence of the poisoning. It's all in my safety deposit box at First National Bank. The key is taped under Harper's jewelry box, behind the ballerina that spins. Protect my daughter. Love my husband if you can. He deserves happiness after all the darkness I'm leaving behind. And don't trust anyone who knew Elena Bennett, because the woman they'll describe to you was never real. She was just Victoria's victim, slowly losing her mind to poison. The real Elena loved deeply, laughed loudly, and fought fiercely for her family. Honor that woman, not the broken shell Victoria created. With love and hope, Elena Marie Bennett. P.S. The laptop password is Harper's middle name plus our wedding date. Rose, 2019. Everything you need is in the folder marked insurance policy. The letter fell from Naomi's numb fingers. The room spun around her as the implications crashed over her like waves. She knew, Colt whispered, his face white as paper. She knew they were killing her, and she tried to protect us anyway. Naomi couldn't speak. Elena hadn't been the mentally unstable woman Richard and Victoria had painted. She'd been a victim, systematically poisoned and gaslit until everyone believed she was losing her mind. The fights we had, Cole continued, his voice breaking. I thought she was becoming paranoid, jealous, irrational. But she was dying. They were killing her right in front of me, and I didn't see it. He opened Elena's laptop with shaking fingers, typing in the password. The screen came to life, revealing folders full of documents, recordings, photographs. Jesus Christ. Colt clicked on an audio file labeled Richard's Confession. Victoria's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Daddy, she's getting suspicious about the supplements. Maybe we should move to phase 2. Richard's reply was cold, calculating, not yet. We need her completely discredited before the accident. A few more weeks of the compound should do it. Make sure Colt sees her at her worst before she dies. And after, we wait. Let him grieve. Let him heal just enough to be vulnerable. Then we introduce the perfect woman to replace her. Someone we can't control. Someone who will give us everything we need to destroy him. Naomi felt sick. Every kiss, every moment of connection, every feeling she'd thought was real. It had all been part of their twisted game. No, Colt said fiercely, reading her expression. Whatever you're thinking, stop. They brought you here, but they couldn't control what happened between us. They couldn't manufacture the way Harper lights up when you sing, or the way you make me feel alive again. How can you be sure? Because I know the difference between manipulation and love. And what I feel for you is real. But even as he pulled her into his arms, Naomi couldn't shake Elena's warning. Don't trust anyone who knew Elena Bennett. How could she trust her own heart when everything had started with a lie? What would you do if you discovered your entire relationship was built on a foundation of murder and manipulation? Tell us in the comments and subscribe, because the final confrontation is coming and not everyone will survive. The attack came at dawn, swift and merciless as a blade to the throat. Child Services arrived with police backup, official documents, and cameras that would broadcast Harper's removal across every news channel in California. They swept through the mansion like an invading army, their leader a stern-faced woman with Victoria Ashford standing smugly behind her. Mr. Bennett, the caseworker announced, we have credible evidence of inappropriate conduct between you and your employee that puts your daughter at risk. Have you ever watched your world end in real time? That moment when everything you fought to protect crumbles while cameras capture your destruction for the world to see? Colt stood in his foyer, still in pajama pants and a t-shirt, Harper clinging to his legs as strangers invaded their home. His face was carved from stone, but Naomi could see the fury burning in his green eyes. What evidence? He demanded. Victoria stepped forward, her smile sharp as broken glass. Photographic documentation of Miss Washington sharing your bed, engaging in inappropriate physical contact, and corrupting your daughter with her influence. The word dripped with racist venom that made Naomi's skin crawl. Those photos were taken out of context, Naomi said, stepping protectively in front of Harper. I was comforting her after a nightmare. Were you comforting her when you kissed her father in front of her? When you convinced him to let you move into the master bedroom. The lies rolled off Victoria's tongue like poison. But the caseworker was taking notes, the cameras were rolling, and Harper was crying against Colt's legs. "Daddy, what's happening?" Harper whispered. "Why are these people being mean?" Victoria knelt down to Harper's level, her voice suddenly sweet as honey. "We're here to keep you safe, sweetheart. Some adults have been making bad choices, and we need to take you somewhere secure while the grown-ups figure things out." "No!" Harper screamed, wrapping her arms tighter around Colt's legs. "I want to stay with Daddy and Naomi." "I'm afraid that's not possible," the caseworker said. "We have temporary custody orders pending a full investigation." Two officers moved toward Harper, but Colt stepped back, his body coiled like a spring ready to snap. "You touch my daughter, and I'll..." "You'll what?" "Victoria interruptive." Attack police officers in front of cameras? That would certainly help your case. She was right, and everyone knew it. Any move Colt made would be twisted into evidence of his unfitness as a father. "There's another option," Victoria continued, her voice soft and reasonable. "Miss Washington could voluntarily leave. Immediately. Never contact your family again. In exchange, we'd be willing to reconsider the severity of our concerns." The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Save herself, or watch Harper be torn from the only family she'd ever known. "Don't," Colt said, reading her expression. "Don't you dare sacrifice yourself for us." But Naomi was already moving toward the door. "Where do I need to sign?" "Naomi, no." Harper broke free from Colt's arms, running to her with tears streaming down her face. "Don't leave me. Please don't leave like Mommy did." The words hit Naomi like physical blows. She knelt down, gathering Harper into her arms one last time, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and trying to memorize the feeling of those small arms around her neck. "I have to go, baby girl," she whispered. "But remember what I taught you? Sometimes we have to be brave for the people we love. But I need you." "No, you don't." Naomi pulled back, framing Harper's tear-stained face with her hands. "You have your daddy, and he loves you more than anything in the world. And you have your voice, your beautiful, magical voice. Don't let anyone take that away from you again." She kissed Harper's forehead, then stood and walked toward the door without looking back. If she saw Colt's face, saw the pain in his eyes, she'd never be able to leave. "This isn't over," she heard him say behind her, his voice carrying a promise that sounded like thunder. Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, but it is. Miss Washington will disappear. You'll be investigated for months, and eventually, when Harper needs a stable mother figure." She let the implication hang in the air. As Naomi stepped outside, the morning sun felt like ice on her skin. The cameras followed her to the waiting taxi, capturing her exile for the world to judge. But as the car pulled away from the mansion, she looked back one last time and saw Harper pressed against her bedroom window, small hand flat against the glass. Neither of them noticed the black sedan that pulled out behind the taxi, following at a careful distance. Victoria's final move was already in motion. What happens when the woman you love sacrifices herself to save your family? Drop a red heart if you're ready for the explosive finale, and subscribe because justice is coming. And it's going to be beautiful. The little girl who had been silent for 8 months was about to bring down an empire with her voice. 3 days after Naomi's exile, Harper Bennett sat in the sterile conference room of Child Protective Services, surrounded by lawyers, caseworkers, and court officials. Victoria Ashford sat across from her, perfectly composed in designer clothes, playing the role of concerned family friend. But Harper wasn't the broken child they expected. "Tell us about Miss Washington," the caseworker said gently. "Did she ever do anything that made you uncomfortable?" Harper looked directly at Victoria, her green eyes blazing with a fury that belonged to her father. "She sang to me, like Mommy used to. And how did that make you feel?" "Safe." Harper's voice was clear, strong. "Before Naomi came, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't remember Mommy's face without seeing the car crash." Have you ever watched a 4-year-old face down adults who underestimated her? That moment when innocence becomes the most powerful weapon in the room? Victoria shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going according to plan. "Harper, sweetheart," Victoria interrupted. "Sometimes adults can seem nice but have bad intentions. Did Miss Washington ever try to turn you against your father?" "No." Harper's voice cut through the room like a blade. "But you did." The room went silent. Every lawyer, every official, every camera focused on the small girl in the oversized chair. "You told me Daddy was bad for making Mommy cry," Harper continued, her voice gaining strength. "You said Mommy died because Daddy didn't love her enough. You said I should come live with you because Daddy might hurt me too." Victoria's perfect mask cracked. "Harper, honey, you're confused." "I'm not confused." Harper stood up in her chair, tiny hands clenched into fists. "I remember everything. I remember you coming to our house after Mommy got sick. I remember you bringing her special vitamins that made her more sick. I remember you whispering to Grandpa Richard about making Daddy look bad so you could take me away." The court recorder's fingers flew across her keyboard. Lawyers exchanged shocked glances. This wasn't the testimony of a confused child. This was an eyewitness account that could destroy everything. "You're lying," Victoria hissed, her composure finally cracking completely. "You're just a stupid little girl who doesn't understand. I understand you killed my mommy." The words exploded through the room like gunshots. Harper was crying now, but her voice never wavered. "Mommy told me you were making her sick with the medicine. She said you want to take me away from Daddy. She said if anything happened to her, I should tell everyone the truth about you." Victoria lunged forward, grabbing Harper's shoulders. "Shut up. Shut up right now, you little... Get your hands off my daughter." Colt's voice thundered through the room as he burst through the doors. Marcus Chun was right behind him, along with 2 FBI agents and a camera crew from Channel 7 News. Victoria released Harper instantly, but the damage was done. Every moment had been recorded, broadcast live to the entire country. America had just watched a grown woman attack a 4-year-old for telling the truth. Colt scooped Harper into his arms, holding her against his chest like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I'm here, princess. Daddy's here. I told him the truth like Mommy said." Harper sobbed against his shoulder. "I told him what Victoria did. You were so brave, baby girl. So incredibly brave." Agent Rodriguez stepped forward, her badge gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Victoria Ashford, you're under arrest for the murder of Elena Bennett, conspiracy to commit fraud, and child endangerment. This is ridiculous." Victoria screamed as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "I'm the victim here. That woman seduced Colt, manipulated him. We have Elena's evidence," Agent Rodriguez said calmly. "Bank records, medical tests, recorded conversations. Your own voice admitting to poisoning her. It's over." As Victoria was dragged from the room, she looked back at Harper with pure hatred. "This isn't finished, you little witch. I'll destroy your whole family." "The only thing you've destroyed," Colt said quietly, "is your own life." But Harper pulled back from her father's shoulder, looking toward the door with wise eyes that had seen too much. "Where's Naomi?" she asked. "I want to tell her I was brave." Colt's face darkened, because while they'd been fighting Victoria in court, no one had been protecting Naomi from Richard Ashford's final, desperate move. The black sedan that had followed her from the mansion 3 days ago was no longer just watching. It was time for the endgame. How far would a desperate man go to protect his secrets? Drop a police car light if you think Naomi's in danger, and hit subscribe because the final battle is about to begin. The warehouse on the docks smelled like death and desperation. Naomi woke up tied to a chair, her head pounding from whatever drug they'd used to knock her out. The last thing she remembered was leaving her motel room for coffee and seeing a familiar face in the parking lot. Richard Ashford, looking nothing like the polished businessman from the dinner party. Now he paced in front of her like a caged animal, his expensive suit wrinkled, his silver hair wild. Behind him, 2 men in dark clothes watched the warehouse in trances with the cold efficiency of professional killers. "Finally awake," Richard said, his voice smooth as silk despite the madness in his eyes. "I was beginning to worry I'd used too much sedative. Dead hostages are so much less effective than live ones." Have you ever found yourself face to face with a man who has nothing left to lose? That moment when you realize civilized society was just a mask hiding the monster underneath. What do you want? Naomi's voice came out hoarse, raw. What I've always wanted. Control. Richard stopped pacing, turning to face her with eyes like winter frost. My daughter built a business empire with Elena Bennett. Patents worth hundreds of millions, government contracts, exclusive technology deals. Then Elena married that soldier boy, and suddenly I was cut out of my own company. So you killed her. I defended my family's interests. His voice was matter-of-fact, like discussing the weather. Elena was planning to divorce Colt, take Harper, and dissolve the business. Everything Victoria and I had worked for would have disappeared. Richard pulled out his phone, showing her a video feed. Colt and Harper in the courthouse, surrounded by FBI agents and news cameras. Your little boyfriend thinks he's won, Richard continued. Victoria's arrest, Elena's evidence coming to light, Harper's testimony destroying our credibility. Very dramatic. Very satisfying for him, I'm sure. Then why am I here? Richard's smile was sharp as a blade. Because Colt Bennett may have won the battle, but he hasn't won the war. Not yet. He nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward with a video camera. The red recording light blinked to life. Here's what's going to happen, Richard said, speaking directly to the camera. Colt is going to transfer Harper's entire trust fund to my offshore accounts. Every patent, every business asset, every penny Elena left to her daughter. In exchange, I'll tell him where to find her body. He'll never do that, won't he? Richard's laugh was cold, empty. You clearly don't understand how deeply that man loves you. He'll sacrifice everything, his daughter's future, his own fortune, his family's legacy, to save the woman who gave him back his heart. The realization hit Naomi like ice water. Richard was right. Colt would destroy himself to save her, leaving Harper with nothing and Victoria free to continue her poison from prison through appeals and legal manipulation. You're insane, she whispered. I am desperate. There's a difference. Richard checked his watch. The video will be delivered to Mr. Bennett in 30 minutes. He'll have 1 hour to comply before I start removing pieces of you to motivate him. But Richard had made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed Naomi was just a helpless victim, a jazz singer from Louisiana with no survival skills. He didn't know about her years on the streets of New Orleans after her mother died. He didn't know about the self-defense classes, the pepper spray in her shoe, or the razor blade she always kept sewn in her bra strap, a gift from her grandmother who'd survived worse than Richard Ashford could imagine. Before you kill me, Naomi said, keeping her voice steady, I have a question. What? Elena's death. The car that followed her forced her off the road. Was that you? Richard's chest puffed with pride. Brilliant execution, if I do say so myself. Made it look like she was fleeing an abusive marriage, driving erratically in her emotional state. The media ate it up, and the car that left the scene? Untraceable, burned to scrap metal within hours. Richard was so busy boasting about his perfect crime that he didn't notice Naomi working the razor blade free from her bra. Didn't see her carefully cutting through the rope binding her wrists. Didn't realize that confessing to murder on camera was the stupidest thing he could have done. You know what your real mistake was? Naomi asked, standing up as the ropes fell away. Richard spun around, shock replacing arrogance on his face. You underestimated the woman from Louisiana. The warehouse erupted into chaos as Naomi dove for cover, pepper spray in one hand, razor blade in the other, and a recorded confession that would destroy Richard Ashford playing on repeat. But the man who'd killed Elena Bennett wasn't going down without a fight. Are you ready for the most intense confrontation yet? Smash that like button and subscribe, because Naomi's about to show everyone what a Louisiana woman can do when her family is threatened. The rescue came with the sound of helicopters and the fury of a man who'd already lost everything once. Colt kicked down the warehouse door like an avenging angel, Harper's testimony still echoing in his ears, Elena's evidence burning in his memory, and the thought of losing Naomi driving him forward with unstoppable force. Behind him, Marcus Chun and a SWAT team spread through the building like shadows given form. Inside the warehouse, chaos ruled. Richard Ashford held a gun to Naomi's head while she pressed a piece of broken glass to his throat. Both were bleeding. Both were desperate. Both were one wrong move away from ending this standoff in tragedy. "Let her go, Richard," Colt said, his voice deadly calm despite the storm raging in his chest. "This is between you and me." Have you ever seen love and rage collide in the same person? That moment when someone you care about is threatened and every civilized instinct disappears? "Stay back," Richard screamed, pressing the gun harder against Naomi's temple. "I'll kill her. I swear to God, I'll blow her brains out." But Naomi's eyes were locked on Colt's, and in them he saw not fear, but fierce determination. She mouthed two words, "Trust me. You want to know the truth about that night?" Richard continued, his voice cracking with desperation. "Elena didn't die because she was running from Colt. She died because she discovered our business was built on stolen government technology. She was going to expose everything. So you murdered her," Colt said, taking another step forward. "I protected my family, my legacy, everything I built from nothing." Spittle flew from Richard's lips as he ranted. "And then you brought this witch into our lives, turned Harper against us, destroyed everything." "No," Naomi said quietly, her voice cutting through his hysteria. "I gave Harper back her voice. I gave Colt back his heart. I gave your daughter the chance to choose love over hate. Victoria chose loyalty to family. Victoria chose poison and murder." Naomi's grip tightened on a glass shard. "Just like you." Richard's attention flickered for just a second, distracted by movement and shadows. That second was all Naomi needed. She drove her elbow back into his ribs while simultaneously slashing the glass across his gun hand. Richard screamed, his shot going wide as the weapon flew across the concrete floor. Colt was moving before the gun hit the ground, tackling Richard with the force of 2 years of grief and rage. They went down hard, Colt's fists connecting with Richard's face in a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. "This is for Elena," he snarled, his knuckles splitting against Richard's jaw. "This is for Harper," another punch, this one breaking Richard's nose. "And this is for Naomi," the final blow that sent Richard into unconsciousness. Marcus pulled Colt off before he could kill the man, but barely. "He's done, boss. It's over." Colt turned to find Naomi watching him, her face streaked with tears and blood, but her eyes shining with something that looked like worship. "Are you hurt?" He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands running over her body, checking for injuries with the desperate thoroughness of a man who'd almost lost everything. "I'm okay," she whispered, falling into his arms. But Colt, the camera, he recorded everything. His confession, the details about Elena's murder, all of it. Marcus was already securing the camera equipment. This is enough to put him away forever, and to clear your name completely. But Colt wasn't listening to legal victories or justice served. He was holding the woman he loved, breathing in her scent, feeling her heart beat against his chest, and realizing that some things were more important than revenge. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered against her hair. "Never." Naomi pulled back to look at him, her hands framing his face. "I told you, we're family, and families protect each other, even when it means sacrificing everything, especially then." He kissed her then, right there in the warehouse surrounded by SWAT officers and evidence of murder, kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning, like she was light and he'd been lost in darkness for too long. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Naomi smiled through her tears. "There's someone who wants to see you," Colt said, stepping aside. Harper ran through the warehouse doors, her little legs carrying her straight into Naomi's arms. "You came back. You came back like you promised." "I'll always come back to you, baby girl," Naomi whispered, holding Harper tight. "Always." As sirens wailed outside and Richard Ashford was loaded into an ambulance under guard, the 3 people who mattered most to each other stood together in the aftermath of their war. They had won, but more than that, they had survived. And sometimes, survival was the greatest victory of all. What does it take to rebuild a family after it's been torn apart by secrets and lies? hit that subscribe button because the final chapter will show you exactly how love conquers all. 6 months later, the California courthouse looked nothing like the sterile room where Harper had testified against Victoria. Today, it was filled with flowers, friends, and the sound of a little girl's laughter echoing off marble walls. Harper Bennett, now 5 years old and more radiant than sunshine, sat in the front row wearing a yellow dress that matched the daisies in her hair. Do you, Colt Michael Bennett, take Naomi Rose Washington to be your wife? Have you ever witnessed a moment when everything broken becomes beautiful? When all the pain and struggle suddenly makes sense because it led to something perfect? Colt looked devastatingly handsome in his charcoal gray suit, but it was the expression on his face that took Naomi's breath away. Pure love, absolute certainty, the look of a man who'd found his home in another person's heart. "I do," he said, his voice carrying across the small ceremony like a promise that could move mountains. "And do you, Naomi Rose Washington, take Colt Michael Bennett to be your husband?" Naomi wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to fit her curves, with Elena's pearl necklace around her throat. A gift from Harper, who insisted Mommy Elena would want you to have something special. Her hair was swept up in soft curls, and her dark eyes sparkled with tears of joy. "I do," she whispered, then louder, "I absolutely do." When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Colt's kiss was gentle, reverent, the kind of kiss that spoke of forever and always. But Harper's voice rang out clear and strong. "Now you're really my mommy." The courthouse erupted in laughter and applause. Marcus Chin wiped his eyes behind his sunglasses. Maria sobbed happy tears into a lace handkerchief. Even the stern judge smiled as Harper launched herself into her parents' arms. Later, at the reception in the mansion's garden, Naomi found herself standing exactly where Elena had died. But instead of tragedy, there was only joy. The gardens were alive with music, laughter, and the sound of Harper singing a song she'd written herself about families that choose each other. "No regrets?" Colt asked, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. "Only one," Naomi said, leaning back against his chest. "What's that? I wish Elena could see this. See Harper happy. See you healing. See the family we've built from the ashes of what they tried to destroy." Colt's voice was soft when he replied, "She can see it, and she's proud of the woman who saved her daughter and healed her husband's heart." They watched Harper perform her song for their guests, her voice clear and strong, no longer the broken child who hadn't spoken for 8 months. Victoria Ashford was serving life in prison without parole. Richard Ashford had died of a heart attack in his jail cell, taking his hatred to the grave. Justice had been served, but more than that, love had won. "Mrs. Bennett," Colt murmured against her ear, "dance with me." As they swayed to music played by the same jazz trio from Baton Rouge where Naomi had started her journey, she realized this was what healing looked like. Not the absence of scars, but the presence of love strong enough to make those scars beautiful. "Daddy, Mommy," Harper ran over, grabbing both their hands. The band says they know the lullaby song, the one that started everything. And as the opening notes of the melody filled the garden, the same song Naomi had sung that first night when she'd cracked through Harper's silence, she understood that some endings were really beginnings in disguise. Colt lifted Harper into his arms, and the three of them danced together under the California stars, surrounded by friends and family and the promise of all the tomorrows they'd almost lost. The lullaby that had once been about healing had become a celebration of love's triumph over every darkness that had tried to destroy them. "Close your eyes, little one. Let the music take you home," Naomi sang softly. But this time, home wasn't a place. It was the sound of Harper's laughter, the strength of Colt's arms, and the knowledge that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones built from broken pieces made whole by love. Are you ready for the final chapter that will leave you believing in the power of love to overcome anything? Hit subscribe because this ending will stay with you forever. 1 year later, the Bennett Music Foundation was the most talked about charity in California. The building rose from the Malibu cliffs like a monument to second chances, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean where Elena had once lost her life, but where Harper now found her voice. Inside, dozens of children who'd suffered trauma learned that music could heal what words couldn't touch. Naomi Bennett stood in the main performance hall, her hand resting on her rounded belly, watching her daughter. Because Harper was truly hers now, through love and legal adoption, teach a group of younger children the lullaby that had started everything. Remember, Harper said with the wisdom of a 6-year-old who'd lived through more than most adults, music doesn't make the sad go away. It just makes it beautiful. Have you ever seen your life come full circle? That moment when you realize every struggle, every heartbreak, every moment of doubt led you exactly where you're meant to be? She's incredible, Colt said, sliding his arms around Naomi from behind, his hands joining hers on their growing baby. Just like her mother. Both her mothers, Naomi corrected softly. Elena's portrait hung in the foundation's lobby, not as a ghost haunting their happiness, but as the woman whose death had ultimately led to their salvation. The children's concert was ending, but Harper had one more surprise. She walked to the center of the stage, cleared her throat with dramatic flair, and announced, "I wrote a special song for my mommy and daddy and my baby sister who's still cooking in mommy's tummy." Laughter rippled through the audience. Parents, therapists, foundation donors, and media representatives who'd come to document the success story that had captured America's heart. Harper's voice, pure and strong, filled the hall. There's a little girl who forgot how to sing and a daddy who forgot how to smile, until a lady came with magic in her voice and stayed with them a while. She taught the girl that broken things can heal. She taught the daddy love was real. Now we're a family, stronger than before, with one more baby coming to love even more. There wasn't a dry eye in the house by the time Harper finished. Even the hardened news reporter from Channel 7 was wiping her face with her sleeve. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harper announced with perfect timing, "my mommy and daddy want to tell you something special." Colt took the microphone, his voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. "A year ago, we thought our family was broken beyond repair. Today, we're announcing that the Bennett Music Foundation has received federal funding to expand nationwide, bringing music therapy to children in all 50 states. The applause was thunderous, but Harper wasn't finished. "And," she added, grabbing the microphone back, "the baby's name is going to be Elena Rose Bennett, after my first mommy and my forever mommy." Naomi started crying then. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears of a woman who'd learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you were really meant to have. As the audience erupted in celebration, as cameras flashed and reporters scribbled notes about the foundation that was changing lives across America, Naomi felt Elena's presence like a warm embrace. "Thank you," she whispered silently to the woman who died to protect this moment. "Thank you for trusting me with your family." Later that night, as they tucked Harper into bed and she sang herself to sleep with the lullaby that had saved them all, Colt and Naomi stood in the doorway of their daughter's room, watching over their miracle child. "Any regrets?" he asked, the same question he'd posed on their wedding day. "Just one," Naomi said, smiling as she felt their unborn daughter kick against her ribs. "What's that? I wish this story never had to end." But Colt pulled her close, kissing her temple as Harper's gentle breathing filled the room with peace. "Who says it's ending?" he whispered. "This isn't the end, Mrs. Bennett. This is forever after." And in a house once haunted by tragedy, a family built from love, loss, and the healing power of music lived happily, truly, and completely ever after. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, share with someone you love, and remember, no matter how broken your life feels, there's always a song that can heal it. What's your lullaby going to be?